fiberglass bed. Beauty, elegance, and affordability. Homewood, Roebuck, and Hoover. And now, WBRC 6 Sports Director, Bruce Cunningham.
Welcome to Legion Field. Since 1948, it's been the site of what has been called the greatest football rivalry in America. Alabama versus Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Coach Ray Perkins of Alabama says the game is bigger, at least in Alabama, than is the Super Bowl. And Perkins should know. He played in 2 Super Bowls. Both Perkins' team and Pat Dye's Auburn Tigers come into the Iron Bowl with 2 losses apiece. Bama's ranked number 7 after its dreams of a national championship flew away. Auburn comes in 14th after a season that no one would have predicted. Now, these are 2 teams that have taken 2 entirely different routes to Iron Bowl 1986.
It began August 27th in East Rutherford, New Jersey, the Meadowlands, as the Crimson Tide met Ohio State in the Kickoff Classic. Mike Shula engineered a patented late drive that gave Alabama a 16-10 victory in front of a national audience, something with which the Tide would become quite familiar in 1986. Routine dismantlings of Vanderbilt and then Southern Miss would follow, and Bama stood 3-0.
Carolina's Pirates were next. The Tide defense pitched a shutout as the rejuvenated offensive
unit scored 45 against Coach Pat Dye's former team. And Game 3 was a big one. Tennessee's Volunteers, still highly regarded at this point of the season, paid a visit to Jordan-Hare, and the point parade continued. Auburn rolled 34-8 behind Brent Fullwood, and like Alabama, Auburn stood 3-0. For the Tide, 3 of the next 4 games were with traditionally rugged opponents, and Bama was up to the challenge. First, a trip to Gainesville to meet Florida, and everything went wrong. A Mike Shula interception, and Bama trailed at the half. But 21 unanswered points in Act 2, and the Gators were beaten. But there was no time to relax. Lou Holtz and his Fighting Irish of Notre Dame came next. And before another national audience on ABC, Shula ran the passing attack to perfection, and Bama prevailed 28-10, prompting this somewhat unusual statement from Coach Ray Perkins.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put them up against anybody, and I would not bet against them.
The Tigers of Memphis State could not argue with that statement, especially after they fell 37-0. Bama's first and only shutout of the season. And the next week brought a trip to Knoxville to meet an arch rival, and the Tide, behind over 200 yards from Bobby Humphrey, handed Tennessee its worst defeat ever, 56-28. The Tide was 7-0 and ranked number 2 in the nation, but it wouldn't continue. Meanwhile, Auburn was rolling to an identical record. The point parade continued against Western Carolina. Jeff Berger and Brent Fullwood leading the way as the Catamount's fell 55-6. And the next week brought an assignment in Nashville against Vanderbilt, Auburn's first road trip of the season. The Tigers piling up 14 points in the first 66 seconds of the ball game, en route to a 31-point first half. And there were 5 Tiger victories against no defeats. Georgia Tech, paying its final visit of the longs to the Plains, was no match either. Jeff Berger and Lawyer Tillman almost personally taking care of the offensive side of things as Auburn rolled 31-10. But the next week figured to bring the sternest test of the season. Mississippi State enjoying its best season in years and led by multi-talented quarterback Don Smith. But Auburn was relentless, dispatching the Cinderella Bulldogs 35-6 to go 7-0. Their national ranking now number 5.
I think probably now everybody will start respecting our play, and I think right now as a team we have a personality of being a good overall team, offensively and defensively, and playing together as a unit, not having, 1 or 2 heroes on each side of the ball, but everybody's playing together as a unit, and everybody's starting. I think we're starting to be looked at right now.
That same day, October 25th, brought an end to Alabama's dream of a national championship. As the nation looked on, Penn State turned the mood as gloomy as the skies over Bryant-Denny Stadium. With almost surprising ease, Joe Paterno and his Nittany Lions of Penn State dominated Alabama 23-3. The Tide bounced back the next time out against now reeling Mississippi State in Starkville. Bobby Humphrey set an all-time team single-game rushing record as Bama won 38-3. Their Sugar Bowl hopes soaring, especially after news of LSU's loss to Ole Miss. The Bayou Bengals were the next opponent, and they were the recipient of several gifts courtesy the Crimson Tide. This Bobby Humphrey fumble into the end zone killed any chance of victory, and Bama fell 14-10. The effects of that defeat were all too apparent the next week. As Bama hosted Temple, the Tide sluggishly built up a 10-6 second-half lead, but 2 late touchdowns made it a respectable 24-14, and Bama heads into the Iron Bowl at 9-2. Almost exactly as it happened to Alabama, Auburn was stripped of championship hopes as well by the final third of the season. Nursing a 17-0 lead in Gainesville, Auburn watched in stunned disbelief as Kerwin Bell came off the bench to lead the Florida Gators to 18 unanswered points, handing the Tigers their first defeat of the season. But they bounced back the next time out, wiping out Cincinnati 52-7 to run their record to 9-1, with only a faltering Georgia team standing between them and the Iron Bowl. But Vince Dooley's Dogs were ready, holding Brent Fullwood to 94 yards and the entire Tiger offense to 138 on the ground as Georgia took the 90th meeting between the two 20-16. And like Alabama, Auburn headed into the Iron Bowl with 2 unexpected defeats.
When we come back, we'll hear from those who will actually participate in the Iron Bowl, and we'll also do our best to bring you up to date on the strengths and the weaknesses of both football teams.
The excitement, strategy, and cliffhanging outcomes are talked about for years. It's football rivalry at its best, and that tradition that started over 50 years ago continues. East Lake Auto Sales.
That's 2 weeks. You've heard your friend's opinion of the Iron Bowl outcome. You've read newspaper